Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Ball, the YouTube channel where we discuss big picture NBA. On today's episode, we will be talking about the Washington Wizards. Currently, the Wizards are in kind of a dark spot with John Wall's contract and injury looming over the franchise. However, Bradley Beal was a bright spot this season. It will be interesting to see if the Wizards want to go with a full-on rebuild, a retool, or what going into the future. As usual, we will go over a best-case scenario for the Wizards offseason, a worst-case scenario, and then what's more likely to happen in this episode of the Offseason Washington Wizards Edition. The Washington Wizards has some very tough decisions to make this offseason. With John Wall's contract and Achilles injury looming over the franchise, the general manager will have some tough decisions to make. John Wall is currently owed $170 million over the next 4 years. And unfortunately for the Washington Wizards, he is going to be nowhere near the same player he was when he was given that contract. Players do not come back the same athletes that they were before an Achilles tear. It's just not possible. So for a guy who bases most of his game off of athleticism, this is going to be incredibly tough, not just for him to stay as a star status, it's going to be tough for him to stay as a starter status in the NBA. The Washington Wizards were once looked at as the new up-and-coming young team in the East that was supposed to dethrone LeBron James someday, and currently they have the number 9 pick going into this year. And right now they have Bradley Beal, who seems like the only somewhat building block on this team. Now the big question for them is, do we want to sell Bradley Beal for his highest value right now, or do we want to wait and see if we can maybe turn this thing around? So what is their best case scenario this offseason? To me personally, the number one thing that they need to do is make sure that they keep Bradley Beal. Beal asserted himself in the offense a lot more last year, and I expect him to do that even more this year. We could see him go from being the kind of good to great to all-NBA level player this season. And even if he doesn't become that great of a player and he stays where he's at, which is right below the All-NBA level, right at All-Star level, you can still trade him. You have a whole nother year of control over him right now. One of the best things that they could do is try to find a way to move on from that John Wall contract. I already suggested it in another video that they try to swap the Kevin Love and Jordan Clarkson contracts and give them the number 9 overall pick, hoping that the Cavaliers will take it. If you're more interested in that video, go to my link and look at the offseason page and go click on the Cleveland Cavaliers video. Now let's get to that draft pick in case they do keep it. Currently, I think that they should trade that draft pick and move down in the draft and draft Grant Williams. I think Grant Williams is the kind of guy who can step into the NBA and be a productive starter right away. He doesn't have a very high ceiling, but he could easily slot in at the 4 for them and do a great job. I think Grant Williams is a current player that could go in and be on a playoff team and be a starter for a playoff team. And currently, that's what we need to see the Washington Wizards acquire, is players like that. Beal is not just some out-of-nowhere kind of guy that nobody knows if he'll be able to have another season like he did last year. A former top pick, a former top high school recruit, a former USA captain for the under-19 team. I think Beal should play this out in Washington, and let's see if he can maybe take it to that All-NBA level. He should specifically want to stay in Washington because he has a good chance of reaching that All-NBA level there, and that gives him more money that he can make going into his free agency in the 2021 offseason. I still currently think that the Kevin Love trade would work out really well for them, but I just don't know if it's actually going to ever happen because it's kind of a crazy idea. So we can see who else they can pick at number 9. A lot of mock drafts have them projected to take Sekou Doumbé, which I really only see if they plan on rebuilding. He's kind of more of a project type of player. I currently have them taking Jackson Hayes, the center out of Texas, that can do a lot of good things. He's a good athlete at 6'11", and he can score the basketball and the pick and roll, and he can protect the rim pretty well too. However, I believe that's more on the worst case scenario, is that they actually keep this pick and don't move it and get anything for it. So on to the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for me is the Wizards decide that it's time to blow it all up and rebuild. I just don't think you're there yet. I think you could be there come trade deadline time, but you're just not quite there yet. Also, don't try to give away so much just to get rid of the John Wall contract. I think there's plenty of teams out there that have a 4 to 5 year window of not being a championship contender, not even being a playoff contender, that could take him on. So if you give up that number 9 pick and don't even move back in the draft so that you can draft someone like a Grant Williams, I think that's just a complete failure. I could see the Wizards with their front office and recent mistakes that they've made doing something like trading away John Wall, the number 9 pick, and a first-round pick for next year, which would just be a dumb thing to do. Also, I think it would be dumb for them to trade Brad Beal for anything less than what a team gets for Anthony Davis. Yes, Anthony Davis is a better overall player, but Beal has 2 more years of control, so he should actually have higher value than Anthony Davis, in my opinion. Maybe it is possible that they can move up and get that RJ Barrett pick as well as keeping that number 9 pick and try to build for the future for that, but I just don't see the Wizards being able to haggle their way into that. The thing they might be able to do is get something like Lonzo Ball and the number 4 overall pick and try to take like Jarrett Culver out of Texas Tech. Then maybe they could have a good core of Lonzo, Jarrett Culver, and whoever they take at the number 9 slot. Which at this point, if they did do that, it would make sense for them to go for Sekou Doumbé, but currently I just don't think it makes any sense. If they draft him but don't get rid of Beal, that just seems like a dumb play to me. So let's get into what is most likely to happen with this team. I currently see them trading back with the San Antonio Spurs so that they can draft Grant Williams. I think that would be their best bet, go back to that number 21 pick. If they can do this and get themselves another starting player to go along with Grant Williams, who can also be a starter, you've just added 2 starters next to Beal, and you might have a shot to make the playoffs in the East next year. As I keep having to show in these videos, Kawhi Leonard might be going west even though he just took the Raptors to the NBA Finals. Kyrie might be leaving the Celtics. There could be all pandemonium this offseason. And let's be honest, the Wizards aren't really that interested in winning a championship as much as they are trying to get to the playoffs and just get to the second round so they can cash in on some money. If the Wizards are still in the lottery come trade deadline time next year, I could see them cashing in on Beal and seeing what they can get for him, but currently I just don't see them trading him this offseason. It's kind of like the same thing with the New Orleans Pelicans and Anthony Davis at the trade deadline this year. You just have a whole lot more that you can get come trade deadline next year that you can't get right now. So what do you see going forward for the Washington Wizards? To me, this is the team with the most gray area of any team that I've done on best case, worst case, and most likely case, so I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts. As always, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.